So yeah, the rugby itself. I mean, we're sort of 4 days now post what was in the end a pretty remarkable win. I don't know if it's possible to say too much that hasn't already been covered, but what are your kind of initial thoughts as to what was ultimately a pretty heavy defeat for the French?
Well, I think I've spent quite a lot of my my last few days replying to, or not replying, but reading comments on TikTok from South African fans who seem to have missed the point that I'm actually English, part of them, but also just a lot of them saying that, yeah, like what was the score? And
Your boys
uh,
took one hell of a beating. That sort of vibe.
basically that box of
Nice.
the champions, box of the best. What was the score? They weren't laughing afterwards. I saw them all leaving, that sort of thing. Um, this game has, I think, for a while got worse in my mind the further I got away from it, and then I kind of rewatched it, and I don't know, it's kind of it was compelling. Like in the ground, it was incredibly compelling, and the atmosphere was amazing, and then like the cold light of day, and with a bit of time, it was actually fairly one-sided throughout. I think
I don't know.
from the brief
Okay.
memory I've got of our chat on Saturday evening, which is minimal. Um, we I think you were kind of saying, or it was close for 60 minutes, and then it was an onslaught for 20. But I think it wasn't a classic by any stretch. I think the actual quality of rugby from a entertainment perspective and from a like, actual quality accuracy perspective, I think was relatively for these two sides low, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I think Elgin Alderman, obviously friend of the pod, was talking about it on the Times podcast, and I think he summed it up pretty well in that it's well, from a South African perspective, it was a incredible and kind of momentous performance, but won't go down as an all-time classic because essentially they were too good in the last
Yeah,
15 to 20 minutes. I think it was. I think it was incredible. Well, it was compelling watching throughout, but it was compelling and tense pretty much up to the point that Feinberg-Mngomezulu hit the post, and that kind of it still felt that there was something in it for France. And I think in terms of the quality, I think you're probably right in that both teams, certainly for the first hour, were a bit inaccurate. I think particularly kicking out of hand and some of the handling from the French was essentially what I think kind of killed them. The inability to make the most of the man advantage in the first 20 minutes of the second half. There's a couple that go to deck, aren't there?
yeah,
Well, actually, and in the first half as well, there's a pass that I think Peno's a bit flat and Fiku puts it behind him, and it was just those were the
that
those
was
were the
when the momentum was
chances.
really with them. I think if like
Yeah,
because they had like if they if he finds Peno there, I think Peno can get down the wing and they can make real yards. And I think they'd get properly in behind then. That's the one that I think of. And then the BLBRA inside ball to Peno that again is just slightly behind him. It's probably on BLBRA that one. But
yeah. There's a little ball as well when from that big Roman towel puts on the deck that
oh
Flamel sort of
yeah,
basically puts on his shins.
yeah.
And
There was no
that
six
was
foot six bloke to get down to his
yeah, and
shins.
that
Yeah,
was you're probably talking momentum 5-10 out. So yeah, I mean those were the chances for France, and it's a strange one actually because I looked at some of the stats afterwards, and you're so used to these days in these big Test matches seeing somebody like a Peter Steph the Toy has made 21 tackles, or I don't know, like a Boudon's done that or made 15 plus carries, and there was none of that in terms of the numbers in the game, which I think probably talks to how fractured it was, how messy it was, and I guess what a good job I think in particular South Africa did at spoiling at the breakdown and really slowing ball down.
Do you know why there probably weren't no stats?
Why is that?
Because they both kicked the leather off it.
Well, they did, yeah.
Like there was no, I don't think France really showed much in attack at all. I was really disappointed with France's attack, given well, I think it probably stems from the quality of South Africa's defence, both in terms of their organisation, but also the fact that France were just kind of being stopped dead on the gain line. But for South Africa, can we get it out of the way? Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu should not have been man of the match. No, that is an absolute, disgrace. And I
think that was fairly universal as well.
You mentioned it to me on Saturday night, and it was like, no way. And then the more watching it back, I kind of thought, was Richard lying to me on Saturday night? Because there is just no way that he's the best player on the pitch. And I think, to be fair, afterwards, I watched a tiny, tiny bit of the post-match. And it was James O'Connor and David Flatman. James O'Connor was kind of like, yeah, he probably wasn't as great. Some of the kicks in the middle of the park weren't as accurate as they could be. Like, you could tell James O'Connor was like, he wasn't great. And then Flat said, you know, if you've watched 10 of his last 10 games, that was probably his 10th best one, which I think also probably sums it up. He was.
But I think that's
he was just not good. The only thing that he did well was the try is obviously good. There's the odd element where I did think there's a kind of in the stadium. I kind of went into this not having seen loads of him. I was looking forward to seeing him play, and like there was a crackle of expectation whenever he got the ball, in the same way that guys like that in the past have had it. But I think the accuracy of his kicking from hand was dreadful, like absolutely dreadful. That's in another game, if South Africa lose that, and they obviously didn't, so it's completely, the narrative goes to the winners. South Africa lose that, you're looking at this young fly half absolutely had a shocker because he was slicing every kick, he missed touch loads, especially from penalties. He missed a number of points, which were hard. Dan Bigger said that, like there weren't, none of them were easy, but if and he kept saying, Dan Bigger on commentary, if you come back to that, at the end of the game, it could be 2 points in it, and we could be looking back on that.
I think there's probably at least 7 South African players.
Like Reinach was, Reinach was the game breaker, and I think the fact that when he scores that try, that keeps South Africa in the game. Because that is 14-6 at that point.
Yeah.
South Africa have been, I think by then it was something like 60% possession and territory for France almost, which is a lot in the kind of what we expected. And that is a moment of magic from Cobus Reinach, that it's also how the composure he has to put the ball down is incredibly underrated, I think. I thought Malcolm Marx was fantastic.
Yeah, ridiculous.
To play basically full 80. Jasper Wiese played the full 80, I think, and was, the more the game went on, the better he got, which as a guy with that amount of work rate and that role is fantastic. I thought Ruan Nortje was really good off the bench. I thought
both Nortje and Snyman were unbelievable off the bench. Yeah, I think if you're a South African player, you're like, obviously, I think we've seen it once or twice before, haven't we, in like the sort of DuPont hype cycle, where it's like, well, if they win, DuPont's man of the match. We don't need to really think too much about it. I think it was a generous man of the match, to put it mildly. But yeah, they were.
I've got that off my chest.
I think I
feel like a weight off my shoulders now.
I think one of the two things maybe before we go through a few of the potential problems or otherwise for France. I think one thing, talking about South Africa, that stood out to me was I've seen a few comments that it never felt in doubt for South Africa, which I agree with to an extent, but I don't think that necessarily is reflective of the kind of flow of play for the first hour. I think the thing that I saw Rassie Erasmus say afterwards was like, oh, it's, a few people have said the group's getting a bit older and things. And one of the things that he put praise on is he kind of said they're a bit wiser, which is a bit of an obvious one to pull out, but calmer. And I think that really came through in terms of there was so much clarity in what they were trying to do. They didn't make those, we've probably called out like three quite big errors, either like that would have led to a line break or just after a line break for France, that feel like they come a little bit from just being a tiny bit, not scrambled, but a bit rushed in what they're doing in their execution. And there just wasn't any of that from South Africa. And that combined with the physicality, obviously the substitutions were chalk and cheese in terms of impact. I think that was a kind of fascinating thing from afar.
The one thing I mentioned that I was having to read through comments on TikTok videos. I did a kind of post-match debrief, which is unsurprisingly not massively coherent. But a few things I said on that were the ref was about the refereeing. Now, the headline news is South Africa got a red card, which could have been an orange, and France had a yellow card that should have been a penalty try. Yes, I agree with. Well, I think I thought live and in the stadium, I thought the Diago red was harsh, but having seen it again, he's fallen foul of the arm tucked, always illegal, therefore no mitigation factor. The BLBRA try, once they give it as a yellow, should be a penalty try. Or sorry, the BLBRA yellow card, as soon as they give it as yellow, I think it should be a penalty try. My point there on it being harsh is that it's just a rubbish rule. Like that, his touch makes no difference, I don't think, to the path of the ball. And I think Jesse Creel just drops it. And therefore, to get a yellow card for that, it's cynical, I guess. So
yeah, I mean,
I don't want to go into the yellow card debate, but yeah, I think in general play rub of the green, I think South Africa massively get the decisions, and there's a few. There's a high tackle from Penno, which is soft as a penalty, which gives them the territory for that BLBRA yellow card. That then the next try, so they all come. Well, I think generally they're in the kind of last few. They're in the second half, most of them, but I think there was some very, very technical, technical penalties, and I think they generally went in South Africa's favour, which is what happens when you are the more physically dominant team. There is a kind of scrum that, but Aldegiri's first scrum, Bernfenter's knee drops the floor and Angus Gardner says play away, which is just incorrect in every scrummaging. But then Aldegiri gets done on the next one. And then I think there's a Malcolm Marks penalty where it's just so clearly hands beyond the ball first. I don't know. Sorry, I'm just getting it off my chest. But I think, I guess the overall point there, to kind of, rather than just complaining about refereeing decisions, is kind of what I was getting at in terms of responding to you saying it was pretty comfortable. I think it felt like France, even though they had all the territory in possession, felt like France was still clinging on in that first half.
Yeah,
and it felt like, that is probably why, whether it was because South Africa were getting the rub of the green at the breakdown and other areas of the pitch, Valemsa takes Fiku, I think it is, out in the air that is almost identical to the one and gets waved away. There is almost identical to one that off the kickoff where Fiku takes out Etzebeth. So it's stuff like that where the flip of a coin, it lands on South Africa's side. And I don't know whether it was because they were on top or they felt like they were on top because of those decisions.
Yeah,
interesting piece to consider.
Maybe I watched it back, so I think there's maybe, as you say, rub of the green, but I don't think this is one where you can point to
I don't think it changes
having a particularly big impact at all.
No.
And at the scrum, I mean, they are it was a worry for France coming in, and I mean they arguably even more in the first half they kind of got dusted, didn't they? They pulled Bowen Venter off after half an hour, which seemed extraordinary because he was giving Regis Montaigne no end of problems. And actually, I think they lost a little bit of momentum in the scrum after that, very briefly.
Yeah,
But there is no doubt that the front row seems to be a pretty big problem for France. And actually,
yeah. Sorry,
a word
Steenkamp
for
would have been Steenkamp up
Steenkamp on by
against
that point.
Geary. Yeah,
Actually, a word for Julian Marchand. You mentioned Malcolm Marx. Marchand was unbelievable,
yeah.
and obviously hindsight's 2020. But you look at what Malcolm Marx did, and you said they wanted to go after a young, inexperienced hooker, at least at international level. And maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. So I don't think Cramore had a poor game by any stretch when he came
I thought
on.
it was pretty good.
But yeah, I think Marchand was probably the standout in the French pack for me. But yeah, did we want to just briefly talk about? I mean, you can only read so much from one game. South Africa are an extraordinary side. I think that's sort of run out of platitudes. But from a French perspective, any areas that you now see as
Well, you
like
just
very
yeah,
problematic, or
just you mentioned there that Marchand was your kind of standout player. I picked up a copy of Midi Olympique. Their highest scorer with 6 out of 10 was Anthony Gelonche. There's a few 5.5s out of 10, which were Boudon, Penaud, Le Garrec. Ramos was 5 out of 10. Marchand was 4.5 out of 10.
they are
Uh,
famously quite aggressive on
Bizarre.
their markings, aren't they?
Yeah. Um, who were your 5-star? Well, no, I don't think anyone was 5-star. Who are your 4-star players? Marchand, which I agree with. I think Ramos was excellent. I'm
Yeah,
sorry, but he is so
his
good. He was
yeah,
magical in that first half.
he was great. Although I think as a back three, that side do struggle more under the high ball than the rest of elite teams, which
Yeah,
is a problem. I think. Yeah, I think Peno opportunist, can't really complain too much. I
I
just
thought he was
thought
pretty good
both.
generally.
Yeah, he was. Still like to see him off his wing a bit more because I think he's more
Yeah,
powerful than people give him credit for through traffic. I thought both Flamand Meafu had pretty decent games
Miafi
for
got
me.
3.5 in Midi
Oh, I think
Olympique.
that's
I
nonsense.
think that's fair.
No, I no. Look, watching back, I thought he was. I don't think he was as totemic as he sometimes is, but I think he actually carried fairly well through traffic when he got opportunities
Mm,
to. Was quite good at the ruck, counter
yeah, that's true.
rucking.
Yeah,
Yeah. Anyone
which
else
is
stand there?
he is very good at, and that's what he brings to Toulouse. I just think he should
I
have
just thought in
offered
the
more ball in hand.
yeah. I mean, you could say that for pretty much everyone.
Yeah.
I actually thought Gael Figo had a decent first half and then dropped off a little bit more than you'd like him to. Yeah,
I'm amazed Le Garrec got such a strong score. I thought
oh,
he
he was
was
tidy.
some of his box kick, like given the amount of kicking that went on, maybe it's just law of averages, but I think some of his kicking was pretty poor.
Bit
And I
long.
think like compared, yeah, too long. Like it was compared to Rhynak. Um, and I am wearing my UBB jumper in solidarity because that is how I would like France to go next week, I
Yeah,
think. I think I thought Roman Ntamack was really poor. I know that's not
I don't.
news that I'm going to get the knives out for Ntamack, but I think the point on Ramos is that he looked so calm and Ntamack didn't. And then I think it's kind of encapsulated at the end by Ntamack kind of getting skinned by
Giving
oh,
up.
he's not really. It doesn't look like he's really trying, but
Yeah,
by getting done by Sacha Feinberg and Mngomezulu when yeah, that's actually ironically that's quite a Entamac esque try as well.
yeah.
And I thought yeah, and his kicking wasn't great. He didn't look very
I think that
assured.
was the main thing for me was his kicking out of hand was I don't think France I think France's kicking game seemed a bit in between for me because they've traditionally kicked it really long, haven't they? And I guess
Yeah,
they didn't want to do that to Valemza,
Colby.
Aronza, Colby, which is fair enough. But then either they didn't execute that well they're not the best under the high ball regardless, and I don't think their kick chase was particularly good. So I think there's a little bit of the wider thing, but I'd agree. I think there was particularly I think towards the end of the second half, the end of the first half, there were a couple of really aimless kicks from Ntamack at a point where they didn't have loads of momentum,
they were kind
but
of
they had
landing in
front
front of
ball.
us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
my girlfriend was kind of like, they keep kicking it down here. Why do they keep doing it? And I kind of had to explain, like, they're probably doing it this way more than the other side, because even though they're both short, this winger is not as renowned in the air. So like Curtly Aaron's they wanted to keep it away from Colby, I think, was part of it. But also, like, why were they kicking it so much?
Yeah.
I think their attack generally is, we've said it before, perhaps more pertinently in the 2024 Six Nations, but without DuPont, it can look at times very bad. It just looks,
and I think
it's unstructured in a bad way.
I think without an out and out carrier at 12 in either Dante previously, Moafana had a really good Six Nations, didn't he? I don't know, that kind of Fiku Barassi feels a bit samey.
That's exactly what one of my concerns was they are too similar, a bit too samey, and I think the back row. I think Guillard and Boudon in Midi Olympique, they've got Guillard and Boudon like kind of good despite the defeat, and then literally on the same page, it's like Oliver and Aldrit to return against Fiji.
Yeah,
I think
Guillard's out injured, isn't he?
Yeah, and actually, I think Guillard had a pretty anonymous game, but he did pit that. He's out with a shoulder injury, and he was down holding his shoulder on like the 25th minute. So I wonder if that played into it. I think when you think of the France good back rows down in recent years, they will have had one of Olivon, Woki, or even, dare I say, Makalu in it.
And I was thinking this.
I think given the options they've got available to them, I think they should go for one of these quicker back rows, because it just looks a little bit undynamic. And we saw the impact of Jegu's pace in terms of charge downs when he came on.
Yeah, agreed.
I think they need a quicker back row, and even like Toulouse have pace in that pack that helps them out, whether it's from Malvaca or guys like Rumat or even Willis has a speed of his own type. They don't have that in that current back row.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I would like to see Olivon or Woki. I guess those are the fit options, or Jegu start.
Makalu,
before you even get on to like Kapir and Makalu.
If you need a guy who's beaten, he was part of that side, didn't he? That beat them in Marseille, played on the wing and the back row. Yeah, he's the man. He was in Cape Town actually on holiday, ironically.
Was he?
Yeah, it's like the opposite of the so Ollie Robinson's playing cricket in like grade cricket in Sydney.
Yeah,
might get a call up. It's like the opposite of that, going as far away as possible, but letting him know that you're let him know you're there. I agree with that completely. In the back row, I think you need a bit more. Dynamism's a cliche, I think. Yeah, but pace.
I think. I think I would like to see the changes. I'd like to see would be probably Jegu coming in for. Well, I guess he just moves your launch to 8, right? And
I would have thought so.
And then Jegu comes in on the flank. I think the props are obviously a concern. I think even Gross wasn't that fantastic, but I think Adosio and Montagna looked out their depth, which is hardly surprising. I would have liked to see Luku come in because of the kicking, and I think they need a bit more direction and a bit more control, which they didn't get from either Legaric or Ntamack. And I would like to see Depp or Ter come in for one of Fiku and Barassi, which, let's be honest, is probably going to be Barassi if you're going to go for anyone. Yeah. Any other changes you'd like?
No, I'd like to see Kapir on the bench for Fiji. I think that would make sense.
When they brought Oradu on, just didn't make sense.
But
if they were going to bring him on, they should have done it 5-10 minutes before.
Galtier's done it a few times now with Oradu. I'm not convinced that he's. Well, it doesn't seem to be the man in that 6-2 split. Because I think it happened against
They should have brought him on when they were getting an onslaught of like lineouts in their own 22.
Yeah.
That could have made a difference.
Yeah.
Because they didn't challenge the South African lineout at all.
Seemed a bit questionable, didn't it? Cool. All right. Well, on to Bordeaux, on to Fiji. Should be pretty good fun given some of Fiji's rugby against England as well. They were pretty impressive.